Not gonna lie, that one hurt.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever it is that you get podcasts. And coming up on today's show, we are going to talk about the Giants losing this heartbreaking game to the Milwaukee Brewers last night. It was a game that was within their grasp, and it just felt like a continuation of what has been a theme this year, which is a couple things. Number one, an inability to just continue to play well. And not that they didn't play well necessarily in this game. It was actually a pretty well-played game. There were some defensive mistakes, but Giants were, for the most part, able to overcome them, and they were in a position to win against last year's Cy Young Award winner, and they faced some really good pitching, and they were right there. But not being able to continue, so they win the final two against the Padres. In that 4-game series, they win 2 out of 3 against the D-backs, winning the last 2 in that series. And yes, this is just the first game of a 4-game series, but you would just love for them to find a way to win this game. So the other thing, besides not being able to carry over winning, basically, consistently, is that they just continue to be like one hit, one play away, one pitch away, and it just has gotten frustrating. They had the bases loaded in a tie game. Darin Ruf at the plate, 3-1 count, 1 ball away from going ahead late in the game, and he hit a deep fly ball to right field, and it was caught in deep right center field. I mean, that's a home run probably in Milwaukee and a lot of other places, but it's caught here, and then in the top of the 10th inning, the Brewers, the Camilo Doval is 1 pitch away from getting out of that inning, which starts with the runner on second base automatically. He's 1 strike away against their number 9 hitter, a guy I hadn't even heard of before last night. 1 pitch away from ending that inning without a run coming across, but the dude hits a swinging bunt up the third base line, and we've just seen that before. That is not the first time this year. We've just seen kind of the breaks not go the Giants' way. So that's the reality of it. The Giants were so close to being able to win this game, and yet they didn't. And so with the loss, which, by the way, great pitching matchup, Carlos Rodon, he didn't have his best stuff, and he got taken out of the game pretty early because it was one of those games where the pitch count was driven up by a lot of foul balls, and he ended up only going 5, and Corbin Burnes went 7, right? Or 8. Corbin Burnes pitched into the 8th inning, 7 1/3. And Rodon only went 5. The Giants allowed 13 hits in this game, so in a way, they're fortunate to have held the Brewers to 3 runs. Giants only got 4 hits in this game. But with the loss, the Giants fell to 45-43. So Farhan Zaidi said the other day that they're basically a 500 team right now, and yeah, 45-43. The expected record is actually 48-40 based on the run differential. Now, I always have people saying, you can't use that, or it's not meaningful because of blowouts. Well, that's true for every team. Run differential includes it all, close games and blowouts, and it's typically pretty good at predicting what a record should be. And for the Giants, it has them at 48-40. And I think that's kind of fair based on what we've seen. I would say definitely the Giants have lost more games than they should have, as opposed to the other way around. They're not like a lucky team at all. They haven't had things go their way for the most part all season long. So the fact is, though, that if you're looking at the playoff picture, the outlook remains okay because the Giants are just 1 game out of that final wildcard spot. They're only 3.5 games out of the second wildcard spot. And for me, you don't really want to finish as the third wildcard team, although I think that they would take whatever they could get. But ahead of them, the Phillies are just a half game back of that third wildcard spot, a half game ahead of the Giants. They've lost 4 straight. St. Louis has lost 2 straight, and they're 4-6 in their last 10. The Padres in that second spot just lost 3 straight to Colorado, and they're 3-7. They've really been reeling, and they're now only just 9 games over 500. So a lot of the teams ahead of the Giants, besides the Braves, who are making a push to try to challenge the Mets in the NL East, a lot of these teams are struggling as well right now. And so for the Giants, they have an opportunity to make a push, and that's why these games like last night feel so frustrating for me, because with a win, they would have been tied for that final wild card spot. After the Padres lost their game, the Cardinals lost their game, Fangraphs had the Giants playoff odds at around 47%, and that was before the outcome of the Giants' own game. So if they had been able to win that game, these odds would have gone over 50%, I'm almost certain. But with the loss, the odds fell to 43%. And so that's the thing, is we're at a moment in the season where you're getting 10-point swings in your playoff odds based on a single day. And so that's kind of the position the Giants have put themselves in, because if you have a comfortable lead, that's not the case. But if you're kind of right on the cusp, then you could be tied or you could be 2 back. Like after today, Giants could be tied or 2 back. It's a big difference. And then the next day, if you're 2 back, you could fall to 3 back, and that's a big difference. And so it really is kind of a precarious moment in the season for the Giants, and it's appropriate that the trade deadline is coming up. And again, Farhan Zaidi talked about how these next couple weeks now are going to define what they do at the deadline. But he did say if they're in the race, which it would be kind of a disaster if they weren't, although their upcoming schedule is pretty tough. They have 3 more against the Brewers, who are a good team. Then they open the second half of the season in Los Angeles with a 4-game series. And so you're facing some good teams here in the next week of baseball. Your next 7 games are against the Brewers and Dodgers. Those are 2 of the best teams in the National League. So the Giants are going to have to find a way to turn the page from this difficult loss yesterday and try to win a game today and try to at least split the series. Now you have to win 2 out of the next 3 to split. But, try to win them all, of course. But yesterday was a game that hurt. Like I said, I wasn't going to lie. It was a game that hurt. So coming up next, Evan Longoria and Tommy La Stella are, quote, trending in the right direction to come back. But is this team better without them? So we're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile has simple online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft her perfect engagement ring. Each ring is one of a kind. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Giants listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement. Use code LOCKEDON. That's code LOCKEDON. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. All right, as promised, are the Giants a better team without Evan Longoria and Tommy La Stella? It's a complicated question and a complicated answer, naturally. And so the deal is both of those players are currently out. Is it a coincidence that the Giants have been playing better without those two? I don't know. So we're going to investigate that now. So Longoria is dealing with a left oblique strain, supposedly mild, and he's already playing in a rehab assignment with AAA Sacramento. He was the DH last night. Tommy La Stella is on the COVID IL, and we haven't really heard much about him, except Gabe Kapler said before yesterday's game that he was, quote, trending in the right direction. Now, that he just set himself up for people saying, does the right direction mean like off the roster? So there's no doubt, and we've started talking about this more in recent weeks, that the Tommy La Stella kind of on the Giants situation just has not gone well. It's no secret. La Stella this year has just a 281 on base percentage, not much power to speak of, and then providing no defensive value, given that he's almost only acting as the designated hitter. And I think a lot of people, that irks them because he hasn't hit since coming to the Giants, really. And so him being your designated hitter. The fact is, DHs around the league, it's not like the average DH is Big Papi. Around the league, you're getting close to league average production out of the DH spot. It's better than league average, but it's not that much better than league average. And so I think we do kind of need to drop the idea that the designated hitter is some kind of like monster offensive position. The league average DH has a 107 weighted runs created plus. So that's, worse than Wilmer Flores, just to give you significantly worse than Wilmer Flores. I don't know exactly off the top of my head who on the Giants is the closest to a 107 weighted runs created plus on the year, but it's just, most people don't get that great of production out of that spot. Mike Yastrzemski is at 111, just by way of example. Darin Ruf at 103, so he's kind of close to the league average designated hitter. But the question is, are the Giants a better team without these guys? And the reason it's a complicated answer is because it's the players who are here who wouldn't otherwise be here if Longoria and Stella were added back to the roster. And so that, like we talk about roster crunches, well, they've got one with Stella and Longoria getting close to returning. And for Stella, this COVID IL, I mean, it's entirely possible that you could use the COVID IL to your advantage. Thairo Estrada went on the COVID IL when he didn't even have COVID. He was just sick, and they used the COVID IL. And so for Stella, like if you just want to bide your time a little bit and not have to make a decision, because the decision is who comes off the roster for either of these guys, let alone both of them. And so when you're talking about, okay, you've got to add 2 more players onto this roster, the guys who can kind of be sent out who might make sense, Yermín Mercedes, who's done well, and so it's kind of hard to justify sending down Yermín Mercedes like in favor of Tommy Stella. They do different things on the roster. Stella is a left-handed hitter, supposedly good against right-handed pitching, but it just hasn't materialized in his year and a half with the Giants so far. And Mercedes is a right-handed hitter whose role is to hit left-handed pitching. So they don't do the same thing. That's more of a Longoria comparison, but Longoria is more like the David Villar of this roster. Third baseman who is right-handed. Villar has been kind of getting everyday playing opportunities. They didn't have him in the original lineup yesterday, but he ended up in there with Wilmer Flores having some calf tightness. But so I guess if I had to guess, the corresponding moves would be to option Yermín Mercedes to get Tommy Stella back onto the roster. And for Evan Longoria, if you've already optioned Yermín Mercedes, as I look through the possibilities, you can option David Villar or you can option Luis González, and that's pretty much it. I mean, Mike Yastrzemski has minor league options. Austin Slater can be optioned, but he's been valuable in the role that he fills. So there aren't a lot of obvious choices. And then it gets even more complicated when we consider the fact that right now they're going with 14 position players and 12 pitchers, which is abnormal for them. They normally go with as many pitchers as possible, and 13 is as many as possible. And they had to kind of burn through their pen the last couple of days with a bullpen game, and then Rodon only going 5 yesterday. And so I would imagine that ahead of this game on Friday, they very well may make a move that's like, for example, optioning Yermín Mercedes to add a pitcher back to the roster because their pen is kind of chewed up right now. And so once you've done that, let's just say they do that, then how do you add 2 more players back? It would be optioning VR and optioning Luis González. And I know a lot of people are probably losing their heads that I'm even mentioning that. That's the answer to this question for me. I don't think that they're better off by doing that. I think maybe you could make a case for VR, who has hit 229, 349 on base, which is nice, thanks to a 14% walk rate. But the average is not great, and the slugging is 400, which is, I mean, it's a 116 weighted runs created plus. He's shown some defensive issues as well, and he's obviously a guy who can be optioned. And so I think there is a case to make that Longoria is more of a known commodity, but at this point, like, are you searching for known commodities or are you searching for youth who can be a part of your future, which Longoria does not represent, but Villar does? And so it gets a little bit tricky. And I've mentioned this before and I'll mention it again. I do think that if Villar shows that he deserves to stay, then there's a case to be made that you maybe should try to trade Evan Longoria at the deadline for some other position of some need. And I think he would have some value because he's done well the last couple of seasons when he's been on the field. And so some team desperately in need of kind of a right-handed bat and specifically a third baseman, I think you could definitely find a taker for Evan Longoria. And for Stella, I'm not so sure anyone would want to take on anything close to the remaining money that he's owed. His contract is backloaded, so he's making like $11.5 million next year, even though it was a total $18.75 million deal over 3 years. It's almost all coming next year, or at least more than half of it comes in year 3 of the deal. And so I don't think he has any trade value, but I think Longoria would. But regardless, it is a difficult question to answer, and I'm going to be fascinated to see what they do. But don't be surprised if they have to option a popular young player. And by popular, I mean, how popular is David Villar? I'm not sure yet. But, I mean, how do they add these two to the roster, especially if they option somebody to get back to having 13 pitchers? So anyway, coming up in just a minute, are the Giants interested in Brandon Drury, as this rumor has it? All of that in just a second. But first, BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including everything Major League Baseball. They've got odds on the next manager to be fired, which is kind of, I think, always interesting. Gabe Kapler, nowhere to be found, at least in the top 10 or so on the list. I think that there are some inefficiencies in that list, and some guys who are favored to be the most likely I don't think are, and then some guys, hint, hint, possibly Tony La Russa. I hate to throw people under the bus, but that team is underperforming maybe. I don't know. It depends on Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the White Sox. It's just a fun thing you can look at, and they've also got updated wins totals for every team. So check it out. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, as promised, are the Giants interested in Brandon Drury? We had a report about this come out. They wrote about it in MLB Trade Rumors, and we're going to talk about it in just a second. Thanks for making Locked on Giants your first listen every day. Make sure to check out the live MLB draft show on July 17th on Locked on MLB Prospects. Right after the first round of the MLB draft, join MLB prospects expert Lindsey Crosby and MLB expert Jeff Ellis as they go deep on the future stars of Major League Baseball. Subscribe now to Locked on MLB Prospects so you get notified when they go live on MLB Draft Night. That's in just a couple days, so we will have content about that, but they're definitely the number one source to check out for this. So anyway, we've got a rumor. This was a rumor that came out a couple of days ago with Andy Martino of SNY talking about how the Giants and Dodgers are, quote, showing more interest, end quote, relative to other teams in Brandon Drury, who's having he's been in the league a long time. We first saw him with the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2015, and it's obviously, it's currently 2022, but I'm pretty sure you know that. But he's having a really nice season for the Cincinnati Reds. The man has 18 home runs in just 79 games played. He's a versatile player. He's a right-handed hitter. He's still just 29 years old, and he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. And so when we look at possible trade target bats, I do think that Brandon Drury makes a lot of sense for the San Francisco Giants. And the Reds, he's almost a certainty to be dealt, given the position that the Reds are in. But when I look at Drury, it's just interesting, what is behind this breakout because he's got a 135 weighted runs created plus. Dude is hitting 279, 336 on base. The power is what really stands out. 532 slugging, 252 isolated power. Like I said, 18 home runs. He's put up 2.3 Fangraphs wins above replacement in about half a season. So playing at a 4.5 WAR pace, which is very good. It's like all-star caliber play. So yeah, I mean, when I look through the numbers, he's making a lot of contact. He's chasing at an average rate. He's homering on 20% of his fly balls. The launch angle, a lot of it is like similar to career numbers. The barrel rate is really what stands out. He's getting barrels on a lot more balls in play. Again, a barrel is like an actual measurable number here. It's not about hitting it on the barrel. It's about hitting it hard in the air, essentially, is what they define as a barrel. And he's getting a lot of them this year. He's also moved around the diamond, as I said, about him being versatile. He has, in his career, played all over the diamond. He's pitched, which, I mean, 2/3 of an inning once, so that doesn't count. But he's played first, second, third, short, left, right, and that's it, not center. But he has moved around. This year alone, he's played short, third, and second and first. And at all of these positions, he doesn't necessarily appear to be the greatest, but he's kind of passable anywhere, with maybe his best position being, I don't know, second base, first base. So he's a capable defender, a guy who can move around the diamond, and a guy who's hitting. And he wouldn't cost an arm and a leg. And so I think he's a perfectly fine piece that you could add to your mix, and he could move around depending on what your needs are. Now, as I just said, they already have too many position players. And I think when you're looking at Longoria and you're looking at Stella, in addition to the young guys, how do you add in another kind of veteran bat to the middle of all that? I'm not entirely sure. And so I think at bare minimum, you kind of have to have either Longoria or Stella not on your roster in order to add a player like Brandon Drury, I guess, right? Because if let's just say you've got Longoria at third, Crawford at short, Flores and Stella and Estrada in the mix at second, Belt at first. Where does Drury even fit in? I guess he could be another right-handed outfielder. Potentially, he does play the outfield. He would move around. That's the thing, is Bryant, you didn't necessarily see exactly where he fit, but he moved around. He played third when Longoria was unavailable. He played left. He played center. And so I think you find a place, but this isn't, the dude is having a really legitimately good season, but it is a little bit out of nowhere. And I think at any point you might kind of expect him to regress back to being more league average than anything else, as opposed to the 35% above league average bat that he's been this year. So I just wanted to check in on his splits. And this year, at least, he's been good against right-handed pitching in addition to left-handed pitching. But in his career, he's been better against left-handed pitching, which is no surprise as a right-handed hitter. But the last couple of years, he has been an absolute monster against left-handed pitching. So he's really the type of guy that I would see the Giants being interested in. And it did not surprise me at all when this report came out that the Giants, I mean, I don't know exactly the Dodgers' current roster crunch and situation, but the fact that the Giants were named as a team showing more interest than most in Drury did not shock me. But again, it wouldn't be an earth-shattering move. It'd be like, Marco Scudero type, just a nice kind of role player having a good year, could carry you if he continues to be hot the rest of the way. He's the type of guy who could carry you, but also you shouldn't necessarily expect that given he's not a superstar. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like the show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot. So thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. Have a great weekend. We'll be done with the, quote, first half of the season next time we talk. it'll be the All-Star break. So we'll be back to wrap up this series and wrap up the first half that was on Monday. So yeah, have a great weekend. Can't wait to be with you then. Stay Locked On Giants.